Moses had it kind of rough with those people. Now, how many of us think that if we'd been there, we'd have been better off than the rest of them? That we wouldn't complain.
We were just complaining about the weather, our age.
Yeah. No, we wouldn't murmur at all.
No.
No, Moses, bring on the manna. Come on. No, oh, I love manna, you know.
Nice and sweet, tasting.
Yeah. Hard to say.
Right.
Probably in reality, we wouldn't be much different than the rest of them.
Right.
And let's face it, I'd never been in that corner of the world. I don't know if anybody else here has, but that's not any pictures, anything I've seen of it. That's not the most appealing place to go visit. I can't imagine the tourist business in the Sinai Peninsula
Yeah, they would.
and Arabia and Midian is all that hot these days. It's hot, but
Wilderness.
it is not that appealing, and that's where they were headed. Now, the Lord said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath, therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place, and let no man go out of his place on the 7th day." So the people rested on the 7th day. Okay, when did God give them the 10 Commandments?
After this.
After this. Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments were given.
Right.
And yet, in Exodus 16, Moses is telling them they need to keep the commandments. And especially the 7th day. That was the focus of the whole thing. There doesn't seem to be reference to the other 10, but at this point, there's reference on the 4th commandment. How did they know the 4th commandment before God gave it to them in Exodus 20?
Must have existed before that.
It must have existed
We
before.
know anything about it, right?
Exactly. Except back in Genesis 2,
Two.
God gave them the Sabbath, and somebody knew about it between Exodus 2 and Genesis 2 and Exodus 16.
Even tithing, where it talks about Abraham, so many of the biblical principles, it was known.
They existed. Not much mention of them, but
Right.
they existed. Somebody knew about it. Okay, and when people tell us that, well, the Sabbath was given for the Jews,
Correct.
well, it was given in Genesis 2.
Right from the beginning.
It existed in Exodus 16 before it was given to the rest of Israel in Exodus 20.
Right.
So it's not a new thing.
Nope.
Not a new thing. All right. Exodus 15. What did Miriam do?
She had the song, right?
What did Miriam do in Exodus 16?
We had the song of praises there.
Song, and what else?
And it was celebration.
Celebration. How did she celebrate?
Sang and danced.
She danced. She danced. Now that runs a little awry with most Adventists.
Their celebration is a lot different than today.
Yeah.
Even David I mean, it's throughout the Old Testament here.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to find it here, 15.
Exodus 15, verse
15, not my bad.
Verse 20. Then Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, or a timbrel, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dancing, and she sang to them. Now, how often do they talk about dancing?
In the Bible?
Yeah,
Quite a few times. I don't know all of the verses.
there are several times. David danced before the Lord. In Judges, it mentions dancing. In Psalms,
Songs.
2 or 3 places, it mentions dancing. How would we take to that today?
But we've become very staid in
Yeah,
our demeanor. But you look at still the Jewish weddings of today, where they dance. Those dances are thousands of years old.
right. Barbara?
When I worshiped with the Messianics, and we had a great big conference down at George Washington's, the Messiah College in Pennsylvania, and there were Messianics from all over the world that were there, and they had dancing, but it's very different. Dancing got polluted,
Right.
and the dancing to the Lord is very different. The women dance together, the men dance separately together, and they are dancing to the Lord. They're singing. It's like a small child that's so happy, he can't contain it, and he's jumping
Right.
up and down and
Right.
dancing.
Yeah.
It's very different.
There are, if you watch Jewish weddings, they dance and they in a circle and they I guess I would never win any contest for
Right.
dancing, but nonetheless, they had events that they danced at, and we have distanced ourselves a bit from that because of the culture in which we live. But that was Miriam danced, and joy. What joy they had as they've come through the Red Sea, but oh, what agony they have ahead of them.
Right.
All right.
It would have been pretty clamorous, their celebration, the singing, the dancing, the tambourines, etc., etc. So it was.
Right.
They were quite animated in their worship.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay.
Let's see a little of that.
Let's look at Sunday's bitter water. Now, let's see, Exodus 15, 22 to 27. Someone want to read that for us? 22 to 27.
Which chapter? Oh, 15.
Yep, yep.
Where is it? So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and a ordinance, and there he proved them. And said, If thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and wilt do that which is right in his sight, and wilt give ear to his commandments, and keep all of his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. And they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters.
Okay. Now, they've gone 3 days after crossing the Red Sea. How much water did they have with them?
not that much, I imagine, how many days' supply they could bring.
They undoubtedly had water pouches, which
Right.
were made from a animal skin
Yeah.
of some kind. And they've gone 3 days after crossing the Red Sea. And the first place they get to is called Marah, and the water was bitter. Now, apparently, the water in that area is still bitter today. And the Bedouin tribes will not drink it, and their flocks will not drink it. But there is some water in that area that's bitter. So that there was a piece of wood of some kind that God directed Moses to use, and put it in the water and temporarily sweetened it. Now, I don't know if it's alkaline water or whatever it is, there's something there. But the fix was apparently temporary.
Right.
It did not
Did not last.
last forever. And to this day, there are a couple of spots there where there are some springs with bitter water. But it's no good.
Excuse Dennis? Also, their herds, they had to water their
Sure.
herds.
Well, you know,
We often think of everything as a desert, but it says wilderness. They had those herds all those years of animals. Those animals had to feed on something.
yeah.
Bible's silent on what they ate and what they did.
And any pictures, anything I've ever seen of that area, the grazing is meager at best.
Especially for the amount of animals they had.
Right.
There were
Right.
a million people, how many critters were there?
Yeah. Yeah. No, the numbers are astronomical. But then they went to Elim, where there are 12 springs and 70 palm trees encamped there near the water. Today, there is an area 7 miles south of where those bitter springs are, where there is an oasis. And there is decent water, and there are some trees. That part all lines up. There are springs there to accommodate people. Can't say it would be adequate for a couple million people, but there is a place where there are springs and water. One of the few places in that corner of the world where there is adequate drinking water. They went out into the desert of Sin. Sin as in Sinai, or Sinai as we pronounce it, S-I-N-A-I. And, you know, people in that part of the world use camels because camels can go a long distance without water. There's no evidence that the Israelites had camels. They had donkeys, and they had cattle, and they had sheep and goats. No evidence of any camels there. So they couldn't go more than a couple of days without water. Critters would not survive. But it says in 20, what verse is that, 26? He said to obey my commands or commandments. So people had a pretty good idea of what was expected of them. The commandments were not unknown.
Right?
Now, God said he would protect them, but yet they brought a lot of problems upon themselves by their attitude. bottom of Sunday's lesson, what trials and struggles have you brought upon yourself? Well, boy, let's not go into details here.
Much.
When I first joined the Adventist church, who came around, I was told, look out for the Catholics. They're out to get us. They're the biggest enemy. Well, I've since come to realize that they are not our biggest enemy. We are our biggest enemy.
Amen.
And I am my biggest enemy. And most of the, or many of the problems that we have brought upon ourselves by our choices or lack of choices. But God hopefully doesn't give up on us. On Monday's lesson, they were hungry. Now, go out into that area, okay, even if your flocks and herds can find something to eat there, what would there be for a human?
Right. There's no crop growing.
Hannaford's grocery store, Don.
Right, yeah, Hannaford, yes.
Down behind the cactus tree.
Right. There's no place to grow crops, even if you're, the animals were able to graze somewhere somehow. They still couldn't grow food.
Couldn't they eat the animals they were, couldn't they eat the sheep and the
They could.
goats and stuff?
But at some point, you're eating your own.
Probably did
Right.
some.
It's
Yeah.
like eating all the food. You got one refrigerator and you don't have a grocery store.
Yeah,
Once you run out of that fridge food, you're done.
yeah. At some point, yes, to some extent, I don't know how many. They obviously slaughtered their animals for sacrifices.
Correct. And that's what the Levites ate.
Yeah, the rest of them, there would be some that I don't know how many they would want to kill.
Right.
I've been in a couple of places. Adventists, we push vegetarianism. Okay, that would be a tough place to be a vegetarian. Very, very tough. We were in Haiti, and oh boy. There aren't many options for a vegetarian there. There were thousands of acres of barren, lifeless-looking ground there, and a few places down on the lowland where they grew some corn or vegetables of some sort, but the vast majority of that land, they didn't grow anything. A few bushes here and there.
We had
And
beans and rice and eggs.
yeah, beans, rice, and eggs. Yes, it was very tough being a vegetarian in Haiti, and I've seen the same thing in Mexico and Dominican and other places that. Yet we are adamant in presenting vegetarianism as the way we're supposed to go, but in many parts of the world that's not really an option.
Even on living on beans and rice and eggs, you're missing out on a lot of vitamins that our bodies need
Right.
for things. But yeah, they had no place to grow crops. They weren't able to make their own bread. Which
Right.
was a huge part of their diet.
Sure. They would have had no flour, no grain,
Right.
no, and they're 40 years out there moving around. Even if they had the seed, I don't think there's much of the land there that would produce anything with that seed.
Right.
So it wasn't an encouraging place to be food-wise. With a whole bunch of people out there, and next to nothing to eat unless they're going to eat up their flocks. Now,
They also complained explained somewhere, it wasn't in Exodus 16. They didn't just talk about, you know, that it's mentioned here, quote unquote, the flesh pots, but they ate bread to the full, you know, because there's a difference between flesh and bread in the Bible. And also, somewhere they talked about not having in here, what chapter was it? But they talked about, you know, the fruits and the things that they were able to eat in Egypt that they no longer had as
Right.
well.
Right. Yeah, and there are some fruits that would grow on trees, you know, that you've got pomegranates and mangoes and things like that, and I don't know. Anybody have any idea how much of that stuff might grow in that area? I don't know.
Then I don't know.
I think one key point is, we tend to be rather gluttonous as Americans.
Speak for yourself.
To the extreme, even myself. When you're in a warm climate, you don't need to eat that much. Not to say that that balances it out, but it is part of the consideration.
Right.
Like in the Philippines, you just don't need to eat as much as you do here,
No.
simply because your body temperature is the same as the temperature around you all the time, so it's not, you're not burning much fuel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. The Lord provided. Well, what did the Lord provide? Exodus 16.
So when the Israelites complained, the Lord said unto Moses, verse 4, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to prove them whether they will walk in my law or not. It will come to pass, and about the sixth day, and gather twice, and it goes through the rules of, you know, how it will stay good and to not work on it.
Right.
Verse 8, Moses said, this shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening, the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord hears your murmurings against him, and what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. So he set out the diet, flesh in the evening and bread for the morning.
Okay. Quail,
Mm-hmm.
which is, you know,
Correct. We've confused sometimes the quail at this chapter with the plague of quail when they still weren't happy eating manna.
mm-hmm.
They wanted to be gluttonous, to Bill's greater point.
Quail, some type of bird, you know, we have quail today, similar to a partridge that we call, or a ruffed grouse, or quail, something in that ballpark. I don't think they were the same as pigeons, but could have been. And the manna. And how did they prepare this stuff? How do you prepare manna? All you cooks, how do you fix manna?
Looks like they ate it right
Just
after this.
eat it, just eat it. Just eat it from what they picked
No,
it
they
up.
said they boiled it, they baked it, they
The
put
manna?
on the manna.
Really? Oh, I thought it was like bread.
No, verse
Oh, they had to make it as this.
16:23, he said to them, this is what the Lord commanded, tomorrow is to be a day of rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil, save what is left and keep it until morning.
Right.
So bake it, boil it, fricassee it,
Yeah.
you know, shish kebab, how many ways, let's make up a cookbook, 37 ways to fix manna.
Somewhere it was called angel food in the New Testament, was it not?
Okay.
It's called that, yeah.
I have heard stories over the years and of people in places where the Lord provided manna for them to eat. How much faith to put in those stories, I can't say. You know, there are stories of people finding Noah's Ark And people have written books about it. Oh yes, Noah's Ark has been found. You can read it on the front page of the tabloids but nobody has ever really shown us Noah's Ark. And I looked online. Oh yes, we found the chariot wheels in the Red Sea when they dug the Suez Canal. Oh yeah. The sources don't appear to be credible. It would be very nice if you could say, oh yeah, when they were digging the Suez Canal, they dug up all these chariot wheels. And you can look at, there's pictures of them online, but they don't appear to be reliable sources, let's put it that way. And I've heard these stories of people that were blessed with manna because they were starving and God provided manna for them. Well, I can't say he didn't, but I haven't found much for credible sources that will back it up. Could God provide manna for us today? I guess he could. Guess he could. Would we grumble after eating it for years? Probably we would.
Right. Think, just at home, after you've eaten the same leftover for 3 straight days, how excited are you on day 4?
Right.
Never mind. That's what they lived on for their morning meal for 40 years.
Right.
Morning meal.
And the quails. You know, even to find fuel for cooking
Right.
out in that area, I'm not sure what the options would be. I guess you can burn animal dung.
Right.
I'm not sure I want my food cooked over a fire of animal dung, but if that's the only option you might have, I guess that's what you do.
That's how they eat.
I don't believe there were much for forests out there that you could cut down for wood. They had a hard go of it.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you know, this is not a comfortable situation. You're out there in the, well, wilderness, desert area. It's hot, it's dry, and there's not much for water and not much for food. And it would be, it's not the most encouraging place to be, let's face it. And to be there for a week or two would be one thing, but 40 years of that would grow old. 1631 says, the people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Well, crackers and honey. Well, okay. That's good for a day or two. As they say, after the 4th day, it would grow old.
All right.
But God provided.
Correct.
Okay, let's see. Tuesday, we've got water from the rock. Exodus 17, 1-7. We got somebody else to read the first 7 verses? We're going to wear Jerry out here.
I don't want to be plugged yet.
Exodus 17, 1-7.
Somebody can read out loud.
And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin after their journeys, according to the commandment of the Lord, and pitched in Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the people did chide with Moses and said, Give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, Why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water. And the people murmured against Moses, and said, Wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt, to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, What shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go on before the people, and take with thee of the elders of Israel, and thy rod wherewith thou smotest the river, take in thine hand, and go. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, Is the Lord among us or not?
Okay. How would you feel? If you're there, how would you feel going a couple of days without any water? And looking around and seeing no prospect of water. Would you have faith enough to believe that God is going to provide you water out of a rock? Barbara.
No, I think all of it, I mean, it's all given for us to look at too. We don't know what kind of problems we're going to have in the near future before Jesus comes in the time of trouble. And I just hope that one thing that each of us, that I learned from this, is that I try to do what Moses did, and I pray to God, and I ask God, instead of complaining.
Instead of complaining. We all do enough complaining. And I'm good at it, I know. Moses struck this rock and the water came out of it. Now, how much water came out?
Had to satisfy their thirst as well as all the critters.
Right, right.
A lot.
A lot. Did he stand back when he hit it? You know, a garden hose isn't going to provide,
No.
nor would a fire hose.
Right.
You're looking at
Takes a while.
a large demand of water. And if you want a good comparison, how many people are there in Gaza today?
I don't know.
Not many, is there?
Well,
Oh, there's-
there's still close to 2 million people.
Yeah, a
Oh,
couple
still
million.
that many still?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Over that-
That's a very concentrated.
yeah. There are close to 2 million people in Gaza. Okay. Which is similar to the size of the crowd that the Bible says
Right.
were with Moses. Okay. How much food do they need in Gaza daily? Been on the news.
Yeah, I don't watch that. It's depressing.
They
A lot, whatever that number is.
they say it takes about 600 truckloads a day.
Yeah.
600 semi-loads of food a day to provide for these people. And they complain, you know, that they're not letting it through, only 100 loads a day or something
Right.
like that, you know, and
How many?
you know, there's thousands of trucks backed up and they won't let them through. Okay, if you want a comparison, here's a pretty good comparison in the same corner of the world. 600 truckloads of food a day. And how much water would you need?
Billions of gallons.
Yeah, How, if you're out, okay, guys, how much water do you drink on a hot day?
Not enough. But, you know, a gallon,
Sure.
If you think about it, Dennis, that water was bursting out of the rock, and where was it going? It was
Right.
going onto the desert sand. So hopefully there was a basin there that could fill up, so that they could bring their, animals there to drink. And then they would have to be able to get water for everybody from the source, because water laying in the basin is not gonna be good for humans.
No?
so also a closer comparison, not closer, but the population, the state of Maine, about 1.5 million here in the state, entire state of Maine.
Right.
How many Hannafords are there? And all the rest of the grocery stores, and how many trucks bringing food in?
Sure. Sure.
So that's the kind of numbers we're talking about. It's a lot.
Beyond our ability to,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. When you think of a couple million gallons a day just for the people, and you know, how much do cows drink?
Right. Sheep, goats.
You know, I've lugged enough water for cows over the years, I can tell you. Okay. Water is the symbol of life, because without water there is no life. Agreed. You know, you can go a while without food, but you can't go very long without water. I read a book recently called The Long Walk. Anybody ever hear of that? Bunch of guys that escaped from a Russian prison camp up in Siberia started out walking in the snow and walked, I don't know, 1,800 miles, 2,000, something like that, all the way south through the Gobi Desert, and ended up down in northern India somewhere before they got, and I'll tell you, it's an agonizing walk. But they went through the Gobi Desert, and they had nothing to carry water with. And some of them didn't make it through. And I've never been in a place where I didn't have water to drink, you know, more than a few hours anyway, you know, something like that. To go for days and days and days out in a place like that, and you know, beyond this one instance where Moses brought water from the rock, I'm not sure what other sources of water they would have had in most
Right.
places.
Right.
We have one other instance later on where he struck the rock twice, and that was a big issue. But as far as other sources of water in that area, none that we know of.
So it is a miracle of the Lord to carry these people all the way through.
Yeah. They're in the Lord's hands, because
yeah.
because there is no
Nothing.
physical way to survive out in that area with a crowd of people
Nope.
and say, oh yeah, we'll make it on a, no.
Yeah.
You know, you're at the mercy of God. Yeah, Deb?
I saw a photo, I think it was on TV, 2 years ago, in the desert, and there was a little child somehow had wandered into the desert, nothing but sand. And I don't know if it was Afghanistan or I don't know where it was, but there was a female soldier that they were coming through, and the female soldier saw this child, and she went over and just sat on the ground and picked the child up and held it until she died. And it just, it has stuck with me, you know, what must it have been like for those people that Moses had in the desert. You know, that child was all by itself. No one like Moses had to come and help.
Yeah. You're completely at God's mercy. Barbara?
When I was a kid, we took a trip from Illinois down through into California, but we went through Death Valley. I mean, purposely went through Death Valley. We had water in the car, we had water with us, but not a whole lot. But he wanted us kids to experience walking on the sand in the desert. So we got out of the car and it was like a crust. And you'd fall through, your feet would go through the crust. And my dad had turned the car off because it was too hot to run the car while it was just sitting there. So he turned it off. And when we all got back in the car, it wouldn't start. And I wasn't very old, but I could feel the fear and the panic in my dad. And it did start, a couple minutes later. But yeah, it's like, what do you do?
Right.
You're
Right.
there. And yeah, that was before cell phones.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of our lives were lived before cell
Yeah.
phones.
You know, and,
A lot of our lives were lived before
Yes.
cell phones, weren't
right.
they?
Right. You know, and we live in a part of the world where we're not short on water generally.
Right.
The last few weeks have been pretty dry, but most of us could find a source of water if we wanted it. Years ago, if you rode around, there were springs, and they were piped out into a tank out beside the road,
Yes, and you could go.
and you could stop and get fresh water there.
There's a place down, my son lives in Leominster, and there's a place somewhere between there and Keene. There's a spring, and he fills up his water.
Sure, sure. And there were a number of them. I can show you a place on Appleby Hill in Guilford, and you can walk down the bank, and there's a pipe coming out of the bank down there, and there's beautiful spring water.
Yeah.
And I can tell you a story. My neighbors, the Fairbrothers, on the farm down around from us, they had 2 oak barrels that set out by the road. And they had spring water, and it was piped from a spring up on the hill, and it was piped through fir pipe. I don't know, anybody ever see fir pipe?
I've never seen.
You've seen the small fir trees that will get hollow in the center?
Yes.
The center rots out of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so you take one, and it's this big on this end, and it's this big on the other end. So you put the small end in the big end and use it as pipe.
Yeah.
And the water ran by gravity from the spring up on the hill, and it ran down into these 2 barrels. Now one barrel was on the road side of the fence, and the other barrel was on the pasture side of the fence. And the spring water ran into the first barrel on the road side, and we used to ride by there on our bicycles and stop, and it was the nicest, coldest spring water. And then it ran from there, the overflow ran across to the barrel that was on the pasture side, and the cattle drank out of that barrel on the pasture side. Well, the old Morris Fairbrother lived there all his life, and he was up in age, and the insurance inspector came one day and said, "Oh, you've got to take those barrels out. Somebody might drink out of that and get sick, and you'll get sued." And they'd been there for forever, as far as anybody knew. And so his son Roy went and he took the barrels out, and it's gone. And Roy said later, he says, he says, that insurance inspector was right. He said somebody would get sick out of that and die. My father's been drinking that all his life, and it finally killed him at 98. And we are fortunate to have water in our part of the world.
Right.
At the church over in Vernon, Vermont, Mountain View Church, we drilled a well in, and the water runs right out of it all the time. And we had to dig a trench down behind the parking lot for this water to run off, and it's running 5,000 gallons a day. A tanker behind a semi-truck, 5,000 gallons a day, and it's certified public drinkable water because it has to be tested for the church. And we tried to give it away, sell it, anything, nobody wants it. nobody would take it. They'll buy municipal water and filter it and put it in bottles and sell it.
Before they'll do that.
But here was water that,
Free, it's coming out of the ground.
yeah, nobody would take it. And we had to dig a ditch and let it run off. And if you had that water in many parts of the world, you would be a rich man,
Yeah.
rich person.
Yeah, talking about those gallons, I was just thinking about, again, back to the people, so a gallon a day per person, right?
Sure,
A
sure,
million gallons just for people to drink every day in the wilderness.
sure.
Never mind, get the livestock,
Right,
how much water?
right. In chapter 17, it talks about the Amalekites, and our lesson kind of skips over that.
Yeah. I know.
Who were the Amalekites?
Forgot their beginnings.
Where'd they come from? Genesis 36:12.
Yeah.
Genesis 36:12 tells us who the Amalekites were.
There's a concubine, Esau's.
Anybody got it?
Yeah. Esau, through Esau.
Esau's son Eliphaz had a concubine named Timnah, who bore him Amalek. These are the grandsons of Esau's wife. So the Amalekites were descendants of Esau, and they came and attacked them, and there was a fight, a war, and Moses had to resort to the holding up the staff, so that
right.
God's blessing would prevail. But the lesson skips over that.
Right. His arms were getting heavy and it took a,
Joshua held his arms up, didn't they? Yeah.
no,
Didn't Joshua hold his arms up?
Joshua was in the fight. Aaron, I thought, Aaron,
Was it Aaron?
find it right here.
As long as Moses held up his hands, 17:11, the Israelites were winning, but when he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone, put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur held up the hands.
Held up his hand, yeah. But
Yeah.
Joshua was,
I thought it was Joshua.
yeah, Joshua was leading the fight.
Yeah.
Right.
Joshua was the lead.
Yeah. We move on to the story of Jethro, who was also called Reuel, who was Moses' father-in-law. He came along with Zipporah, Moses' wife, and Moses' two kids. Now, Moses had apparently sent his wife and kids back to be with Jethro, her father,
Right,
while this whole episode was playing out with the Exodus and the Pharaoh and all of that sort of stuff. Didn't want them involved and at risk. So Jethro comes on the scene with Moses' wife and his two kids, two boys.
and we say kids, but these were grown men at that point.
Well,
I'm assuming.
yeah, who knows? Yeah, I don't know how old they
Not
were.
How it read when Moses married, after going into the house of Jethro, and how soon he married and had children. I don't think it gives us a timeline.
Boy,
I'm not sure about that, because when she traveled with the boys and they were going down someplace, anyway, she ended up circumcising them because God was gonna kill them, remember that?
right.
So they were young.
I'm not sure how old they were.
But this was a year out of Egypt, because they just celebrated the first Passover after that.
Okay. All right.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'd have to do some research
You
on
have
it.
to definitely,
Yeah.
see the timeline, but anyway,
Yeah.
family came.
Yeah. Yeah, the family came. And they're out in Midian now. Now Midian is a little further to the east. Who are the Midianites?
Which branch did they come out of?
Jethro was Midianite. Genesis 25:1.
Right. Keturah's second wife.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Abraham, Genesis 25:1. Abraham took another wife who, this is after Sarah died, whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimram, Jokshan, Medan, Midian,
Right.
and a couple of others. So Midianites were descendants of Abraham, and Jethro, or Reuel, whichever name you want to give him, was a Midianite. And this is out in Midian. Moses knew that territory. He'd spent 40 years out
He
there.
was tending sheep.
He knew that territory,
So obviously they had something to eat.
right?
For animals.
Right. So this was, even though Moses was headed out into that area, it was not unknown to him. Maybe he was the most qualified to lead people in that area because he'd spent some time there. All right. We have these instances of bread being the manna, the bread of life, and the water. A couple of instances of water where the water had to be sweetened because it was bitter, and then where there wasn't any water, it came from the rock. God provided the quail for them for meat, and the manna for bread that tasted like wafers and honey. Would it have been easy living?
No.
No. No.
Not really, but they were no longer, they weren't having to work, they weren't slaves in Egypt anymore. They weren't constructing things, they weren't building things, they were shepherds at best, some of them. I don't think every last one of them would have been a shepherd, but, they must have kept busy doing something during the day.
What would you do for 40 years out in the desert?
Right.
Sit around and play cards or what would you do?
The heat of the day, well, the cloud provided.
Yeah, and we live in our homes with our air conditioning and our running water and our bathrooms and stoves and everything to deal with. Those of us who've gone camping, realize that the basics of life are far removed from the way we live today.
Correct.
And here were these people, what did they have for shelter? Did they have tents with them? Today you can buy a tent at LL Bean, that weighs 5 pounds
Right.
or less, and it's got little sticks in it, and it takes 5 minutes to set it up, and you're all set. You stop and think of a tent made of goat skins or whatever it might have been made of, I don't know. And sacking that around through the desert every time you get up and move. And certainly they didn't need much shelter from rain, but you needed shelter from the sun.
Well, the cloud of the Lord gave them a fair amount of shelter from the sun during the day.
Okay, right.
That helped, but they still needed shelter. So that's what they would have had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it talked about, you know, for, prior to this, you know, there were the nomadic tribes with their tents, et cetera.
Yeah, they were used to living that
Yeah,
way.
They had lived that way.
They were used to it. I'd hate to think I had to do it, you know,
No.
to me, going camping means you got a 24-foot camper, you know, and with a,
Good glamping. I did a lot of, when I was young and Helen and I were younger than kids, we did a lot of tenting.
yeah,
Until it get a little rough, sleeping on my back on the ground,
right.
somewhere in my late 30s.
Yeah, they didn't have a perfect sleeper
No,
or a beauty rest to
no. It was no walk in the park.
no, no, it was tough going. But the lessons from it, the lesson from it is to depend on God, and they were in a place where they could not sustain themselves. They had to depend on God, period. And without Him, they would die.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess it's time to end, so let's bow our heads. Thank you, Lord, for your watching over your people in times of need. We pray that we can have the faith to believe that you will watch over us in our times of need today. Amen.